Good day to everyone and welcome. We're so glad that you joined us for today's Global Conversation in Literacy with Dr. Julia Davies. Some of you are frequent GCLR webinar participants, and it's great to see everybody again. For those of you that are joining us for the first time, welcome. We're really glad that you're with us today. Your moderators for today are Dr. Peggy Albers and Dr. Dennis Odo, professors of language and literacy at Georgia State University in Atlanta, Georgia. And me, Tara Campbell. I'm a language and literacy doctoral student at Georgia State University as well. And also with us today are research assistants David Brown and Christy Pace, and GCLR social media researcher Tuba Onge. The Global Conversations in Literacy Research consists of online interactive web seminars with the intent to circulate cutting-edge research in the field of literacy and language arts. GCLR is also a research project that aims to study the nature of technology-mediated interactions within literacy-focused web seminars. We'd really like to invite you to participate. So if you're willing to participate in a brief interview, please type your email address into the chat area, and a research team member will contact you within a few days to schedule an appointment. The data that they collect will provide important information for understanding the nature of web seminars to share scholarship across the world. Throughout today's web seminar, if you have any comments or questions, please type them into the chat box. And Dr. Odo will be monitoring the chat box and your questions and comments, and at the end of the presentation, Dr. Davies will address as many of these as possible. We would really like to know where everyone is from today, so if you could please click on the wand tool. It is to the left of the map. You'll see it looks to me like a sparkler, and just then click on the map where you are so that we can see where everybody's located today. So we've got a nice group, different parts of the US and the UK.
Seems as if we have lost a little bit of audio from one of our moderators. I think she's logging back in, and we'll just continue with our opening slides. So welcome everybody, this is Peggy Albers, and I think we're going to try to get back here. Here we are. We would really like to have all of you interact with your comments. As Dr. Davies speaks, please feel free to type your comments and your questions into the chat area, and Dr. Davies will address as many of these as she can, and this part of the presentation will be facilitated by Dr. Odo. There we go. And Dr. Julia Davies, we are very excited to have her join us today from the UK. She said that it was snowing over there, and so we are all very happy here in the US for some of us who don't have snow, so we're very excited that she's able to join us, because sometimes snow has some issues in terms of projecting vocally. So we're looking forward to Dr. Davies' presentations. As many of you know, she's a highly acclaimed scholar. She's a senior lecturer at Sheffield University in Sheffield, England, and her research interests span digital literacies, online learning, and textual analysis. She's got some new presentations that we hope that you'll check out at Amazon and on her site, and as well as our site as well at GCLR. She's just authored Web 2.0 for Schools, Learning and Social Participation, that was co-authored, and she has co-authored and authored a number of publications and has worked extensively in the pursuit of understanding new literacies. She is the editor of Literacy, the official journal of the United Kingdom Literacy Association, and we're really looking forward to having her talk to us about her insights into new literacies and the space around the hairdressing salon that she has been working in. So this is going to be a very exciting presentation. And it is without further ado that I introduce Dr. Julia Davies. Could we give her a virtual round of applause? There's a little hand just underneath the area where all the people's names are. Could we give her a round of applause? Thank you very much. And Dr. Davies, you are on.
Hello, thank you very much, Peggy. That's a very kind introduction. I really appreciate it. I hope that everybody can hear me now. Had one or two little teething problems testing the sound initially, but I think we're okay to go. My title, Immaterial Girls Living in Immaterial Worlds, Identity Curation Through Time and Space, uses some very slippery terms. And in this paper, I think not only about materiality and about space, but also about local and global context and identity. And I'm going to talk about meaning making and about the ways in which we can manipulate text as a kind of ongoing project of the self. And of course, Anthony Giddens has also talked about the ways in which we construct narratives of our lives in an ongoing story of the self. And I think Facebook allows us to present a narrative of the self, but also to curate this narrative as a representation so that a self appears online for scrutiny. And then that scrutiny is for ourselves as well as for others. And I use the phrase curation of the self drawing on the work of John Potter, who has written a book about this, just published. There's optimum opportunity for Facebook users, especially prolific users, to see the self as partly constructed by the discourses within the Facebook space. So I think that in Facebook, materiality is problematized, or the sense of what is material and what is not material becomes a moot point. Kevin Leander and Peggy Sheehy blew me away in 2004 with their edited collection, Spatializing Literacy Research, because for the first time I came across this idea about it being possible that discourse can actually produce space. And they say, because discursive practices are located in space, and because discursive practices actually produce space, we propose to disrupt folk notions of how literacies are simply situated. And they talk about an interpretative loss when we consider how practices occur in spaces, because what Leander and Sheehy do is they bring context to the fore as an ongoing process of creation, so that we understand space as something that's produced through our own discourses. And in this way, I'd like to see Facebook as a space that has been constructed through the combined discourses of its participants, and that space is invented and reinvented on a moment-by-moment basis. So when I hear about people talking about Facebook in dismissive terms, saying, oh, I wouldn't go on that, well, it depends what the that is. Facebook is not a monolithic site. It's dynamic, multifarious, and constantly being reconstituted. And so those aspects of Facebook mean that participants not only construct the Facebook space, but that they excuse me, jointly construct versions of themselves. And this affects the way in which they regard their own identity and their way of being in the world. In this paper, I deal with these concepts by thinking about specific data drawn from the Facebook pages of just 4 female trainee hairdressers who I came to know over a period of time for just about over a year. And these trainee hairdressers were based in a local college, and they were taking a specialist module in hairdressing, and it was about how to do bridal hair and what they called updos. And so it was for long hair which they pile up on the top of their heads in very elaborate ways, and that was the specialist course that they were doing. And these young women had a great interest in fashion, and as well as participating in training to beautify other people, they were extremely interested in styling their own body images and sharing pictures of themselves online. And at the same time as all of this was going on, their training, they were really struggling financially, working in part-time jobs, paying for themselves to go through college. And so represented in their Facebook pages were not just their home and their college lives, but also their social events in pubs and nightclubs, their work in the salons, and also part-time work in shops and so on. I was very, very privileged to be able to see all of that, to see their families, to see inside their homes, to see their friends' photographs, the insides of their workplaces, and to share in special moments in their lives. And Alexandra Kendall from the University of Birmingham talks about how researchers of young people's digital literacy practices might awkwardly appear as strangers viewing the exotic. She uses the analogy of the Victorian peep show with their massive bodies peeping into tiny spaces, who peer down, sort of enormous and unwieldy as they watch the activities of others. And certainly the phrase lurk has been used of me, people asking me if I'm a lurker. And when I first met the young women who were part of my project, they did ask me, well, are you a weirdo then? Are you a paedophile? What are you doing wanting to spy on young women? And so I did have to work hard to gain their trust initially, and just 4 of them agreed that I could be their Facebook friend. And so far, none of them have unfriended me, even though that we're almost a year at the end of the project. There were things that I found that I had in common with these young women, but probably far more things that separated us, and I seemed very other to them, I think. So I followed these young women on their Facebook pages. I met them in the college refectory as well as in the hairdressing salon. And I was interested in the research questions that are displayed on the slide here. And I wanted to look at these young women who didn't see themselves as writers, but nevertheless they were involved in daily creating texts about themselves and about other people. And I wanted to look at the kinds of texts that these young women were producing and to consider the practices that they were engaged in. However, as time went on, I became interested in Facebook as a space as well, which became an unbounded arena that seeked out not just as a background to the women's lives, but as part of the day-to-day way in which they represented themselves to each other, how they visualized themselves, and the way in which they conducted their discourses. So Davies has written about how web-based practices challenge our understandings of time and space. And there are complicated relationships between the global and the local, which Barton in 2010 talked about. And Jackie Marsh has talked about how young people's interactions in the virtual world of Club Penguin and how the spatiality of learning points to the way in which online and offline spaces are mutually constitutive in children's lives. And people like Leander and McKim have talked about the impossibility of separating online with offline spaces, and about the importance of carrying out what they call connected research, so that you don't just look at the online space, but that you need to move out of that space as well in order to see the dynamics that take place between those two spaces. In this particular image that you see here on this slide is taken from one of the trainee hairdresser's photo albums, Hannah. She called the photo album Prom, and there were about 26 images of the prom that her school an event on the last day of their school lives. And here she is lying in a very elaborate ball gown, all these girls looking like princesses or something, lying on the ground of the hotel which hosted this great big social event that they've been planning and talking about for over a year before. And while the event is in Sheffield, this event is very much modelled on those which the girls had seen on American TV series, which are avidly watched in the UK. The high school prom is something that's very new to the UK and has been imported from directly from TV programmes that the young people have been watching. So the young people dress up and attend an evening do with a disco. And the materiality of the event is very important, with these glamorous gowns and elaborate hairdos and so on. And this particular set of images got lots of comments on Hannah's Facebook. And so one friend comments something like, "Gorgeous baby girl," with gorgeous spelt G-A-W-J-U-S, gorgeous baby girl. A whole series of comments from all kinds of people, including an aunt who says, "Me and Auntie Janine think you look beautiful, our Hannah." So the dress she's wearing is sourced from eBay, and it's sent to her from China, sent to Sheffield just in time for the event. And so the image and the comments represent a sort of coming together of discourses from global spaces, but cited here as a kind of local medley. And in some, this photograph, along with others, evoking princess fairy tale narratives with popular US television series, signifies a highlight in the local life of the girls in this northern UK city. And the photographs of the event comprise a new event, the Facebook event, providing the evidence to look back on, to talk about and share across multiple Facebooks, so that each participant who's tagged in every photo plays a part in building up the accumulated resources, forming a collaborative narrative, drawing on the comments from aunties, from friends, from people who just about know them. There's this whole discourse that's created within Hannah's Facebook page and leaching out into the pages of others. And this is an event which was partly put together in order to be photographed. This idea of the creation of the fairy tale setting and the fairy tale dresses was partly about the photographs that would be taken and that would inevitably be shared on Facebook. So even those who did not attend could comment as onlookers, and after a series of comments on one of the photographs, Hannah wrote, "And yeah, it was good actually, right posh though," with lots of smileys and hearts. So all of this, the dress with its fairy tale nuances and its international provenances, with the US derivation, the coming together of something from China, all these things are from global spaces but are given this very local flavour in the comments that are written underneath each of the photographs. So the idea of online and offline boundaries are brought seriously into question when we regard this screenshot of Josie's Facebook here. And you can see a map on the bottom left of that screenshot showing the geographic location of Josie over a non-specific but recent time span. And there are a number of little dots there showing where she's been. And so within this particular screenshot, you see represented Josie's life offline, but kind of kaleidoscoped into the Facebook wall, so that this image of where she's been comes into the Facebook space itself. Also around this, you can see Josie's social history, with photographs of recent events, images of her friends, and things that she likes that you can click on and go and have a look and see what she likes. The hairdressers told me that they spent quite a lot of time culling their Facebook pages, deleting references to themselves if they didn't like the image, so that those images would then disappear from their walls. And there's a sense in which they live their lives sometimes in anticipation of being on Facebook. Moreover, that not having an online presence is to be viewed as absent from the social scene. one of the girls said to me, pictures are everything. I can't wear the same thing twice because of all the photos on Facebook. Even if you're going out with different groups of people. And she laughed as she said it would be social suicide. No, you don't want people to think you've not got many clothes, and you definitely want them to see you with all your friends. So there's a sense in which this kind of online party is something which not only is an album for them to look back on, but there's a very strong sense of audience that other people are participating in all of this as well. Now I know you can't read this. I'm going to show you the text of this on the next slide, but I wanted to just comment to you, this is what a Facebook page looks like in case you're unfamiliar with it. I'm going to read the text to you so that you can get an idea of the local dialect and of how they're using spelling to be a little bit creative with language. And just to tell you that the Star is the name of the local newspaper, and Josie and Rhiannon, whose name is written here as Ree, are really good friends. They see each other in college every day and ring each other up all the time and text and Facebook. They're very, very close friends. So Josie starts talking. Was in the Star last night. Shame I look vile. Rhiannon, so you look no different then. Fuck you. Doing it tonight? That means doing anything tonight. Now, apart from dying, nothing apart from dying. Yesterday I had to leave college early because I didn't feel well, and then I threw up on tram. Then when I got home I was throwing up for 12 hours. I couldn't even drink water. So I don't really want to do it because I feel like I might be sick again. Wow. Somebody else says, you missed my steak and chips. It was epic. Josie says, oh no. Someone says, oh yep. Rhiannon says, as if you threw up on tram, ha 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 ha. Josie replies, I know, I'm proper nasty. What happened, ha ha? What do you mean what happened? Did you have to get off? Josie replies, well, I'd just gone past City Hall and I knew I was going to be sick, so I thought I'd get off at West Street so I can get some fresh air. So I went to the doors to get off, but they opened and I threw up and just got off the tram and then got on Nexton. Proper smooth move. Ha ha ha. Can I ring you? Got something to tell you that you won't be interested in, but I want to tell you. Oh, you ring me, please. All right. But I'm going to put you on loudspeaker because I'm going to vom. Don't get mad. So there's a real sense here of Josie and Rhiannon creating a comedy text for their friends to read and enjoy. And Josie presents herself as a very comic character, and she works hard in her writing to evoke the sense of the local dialect. And that's quite a difficult thing to do, but she manages it quite well. And they're sort of playing here and insulting each other, and they swear at each other. Rhiannon insults Josie saying, you look no different then, when she says that she looks vile. And what isn't said is that Josie was in the newspaper because she had won an award for her hairdressing, and neither of them bother mentioning that because they're so busy showing the others what good fun they can have and what good friends they are. As well as the sort of local dialect that's in here, right in the centre of it, we have Josie saying, I know, I'm proper nasty. And what she's trying to do there is she's aping a sort of popular culture male rap style. And here she's kind of being very brave. She's ventriloquizing other voices. And all of this in order to just sort of entertain other people. But that kind of dialect does something, I think, to reinforce their social ties with each other. In ways which evoke what Alison and Boyd talked about, which is that when we're in online spaces, particularly social networking sites, we're much less interested in the global opportunities that the internet offers offers us, but much more interested in thickening existing social ties. But here we've got Josie and Rhiannon creating themselves as particular types of character that sort of parody themselves and almost present themselves as stereotypes for the entertainments of others. And they do this quite often. So here we've got Rhiannon drawing on popular culture to try to get Josie's attention. So she writes at the top, "Get your lesbian feet out of my shoes." And Josie replies saying, "I don't get it." Rhiannon says, "Keira Knightley's mum says it on Bend It Like Beckham," which is a popular UK film, and writes, "LMFAO, laugh my fucking arse off." "No, you say it when I try your shoes on." "I would do if you could fit your fat toe in them." "Oh, Georg is on a diet." "Shut up, my toe is on a diet." OMG, oh my God. So here we've got these girls just playing all the time online. Now you might feel like this is, well, so what? But actually, one of the things that I think is quite interesting about this is that this sort of display of verbal dexterity is very much a display. They could have gone on the instant messaging part of Facebook, or they could have been texting each other on their mobile phones, but what they've done is they've chosen to put this here as a kind of thing for other people to read, but also to put that down onto their Facebook walls as part of their curation of their own identity. And as Barkin talks about, our personal and cultural histories not only mean that we experience, use and interpret language and literacy in ways that reflect accumulations of meanings from our past, but that these provenances influence how we define and redefine space and place. And we recursively and reflexively, I think, define and redefine our relationships as well. And we adjust our sense of who we are and where we are in the world on a moment-by-moment basis by the discourses that we're involved in. And the fact that these stay in the online space for Josie and Rhiannon to look at later, as well as their Facebook friends can look at those and think about them in terms of their identity. Just jumping for a moment to a series of photographs here. The multimodal landscape of Facebook means that such ventriloquizing or intertextual referencing can happen through images. The video of Britney Spears, her "Hit Me Baby One More Time" dancing in school uniform, is evoked here in these series of images of Hannah. So there's this one here with very local space outside her house. You can see the camper van in the house opposite and the high hedge. So she's not taken much notice of the background there, but she's kind of representing Britney here in her pose. And I've got the Britney Spears picture somewhere here. Roberta Taylor has referred to something called postural intertextuality. And often the poses that the young women stand in for their photographs to be taken on their Facebook are imbued with the styles from elsewhere. So some photograph albums have features in common with celebrity magazines, showing lifestyles of well-dressed people against a range of domestic and social backgrounds, such as kitchens, nightclubs and bars and so on. But here we saw Hannah standing in a particular pose, and she said to me, "Oh, I just stand how it feels right, or what I think looks good. It's partly to show off your clothes. I like to look back on what I were wearing for things. I stand so the photo looks nice." And I'm just going to very quickly take you to this series of photos as well, which shows Hannah and her friends. If you look at the bottom there, Hannah and her friends getting ready for a night out. It's the night before Halloween, and this is them getting dressed up as in bandages, blood stained with red lipstick and so on, and posing for the camera in Hannah's house. And in fact, Hannah tells me that in the end they didn't go out because they had such fun getting ready to go out, and that the whole thing anyway was about putting the pictures on Facebook and posing. And you can see that on the top left there, Hannah picked one of those images for her profile, so that would be there for quite a while. So this postural intertextuality, I think, is an interesting thing whereby consciously or unconsciously the young people are imitating what they're seeing in the media and drawing on those discourses and reinterpreting them in their Facebook pages. Very commonly, I saw updates from the friends where it was clear that they were using Facebook as part of their socializing, and that the Facebook space was an intrinsic part of a social event. And so in this screenshot here, we see Elizabeth narrating an event that she had organized. And for her status, she writes, "Treating my fabulous staff to dinner. I love my girlies. I'm with Hannah and Terry," and she tags Hannah and Terry. Now, such an update where somebody puts names with people who are co-present will immediately alert those people that they've been tagged in a photograph because their mobile phones will buzz or vibrate. So both Hannah and Terry immediately responded within Facebook to an event that they were actually also attending at that restaurant at that moment in time. So they will have been facing each other at a table in a restaurant and be writing about what's happening on their mobile phones and texting each other as well as talking to each other face to face. So there's a sort of layering of communication with each medium endorsing the other. And in that way, the event takes place sort of across multiple platforms at the same time. But the girls are also able to broadcast their voices while also within that particular geographical space. And so, in fact, 13 other people immediately like the comment. So it's almost as if those people are occupying the same kind of space, whether that's at the restaurant or within the Facebook world, if you like. So while Facebook again has the potential to become a back channel for transgressive commentary, actually there's a sense in which the girls are performing as if on a back channel in a way that endorses their friendship, so that their friendship is kind of doubly endorsed. Quite a strange thing to happen, I think. And this whole thing about texting people and wanting a response in the immediate time, we see in this update here. So we've got JD here saying, "Getting our boarding tickets, we're ready to go back to Sheffield. I hope you all haven't missed my loud self too much," with a smile, and she tags the people that she's with at Mallorca Airport in Spain. And it's almost as if she's sending a postcard here to others who are not with them. Now, Stacey and 3 others who are in Spain with her, they like it. But the people who are reading that back in the UK comment and talk about how much they're missing her. So, well, your mum and Chanel were like lost souls yesterday, and it was like a Miss Jade Wright day, ha ha. And somebody else says, "Laugh out loud, Kerry, it's too quiet here, we love you, JD." And so there's this interesting thing that's happening where in this particular update there's a very strong sense of people being separated in geographical space and time. And the words that we see here are intended to draw people closer together, but actually what we see is that they are a long way apart. Now, I'm afraid this is not particularly clear, and I didn't really want to read this one out loud to you, but I will. Rhiannon has an update on here where she talks, where she says, "I'm still dying at when that boy asked me for my lips, ha ha ha. What shit's choice in words. He's a slimy cunt. I can't get the blood off me still, for fuck's sake." So she's using very, very taboo language here, and she's just putting that out there, not addressing a particular person at all, but actually being very kind of unfeminine, if you like, being very transgressive about what she's saying. And lower down that screenshot, you can see things that she'd said earlier, pretending to be a man with a penis. And she's saying, "Shall I draw with a penis? Shall I sculpt the penis? Should I conduct with my penis? I'm dying." And when I later spoke to Rhiannon, she said that she was really drunk when she updated those particular, at that particular time. And so what I think is happening here is that she's not just being transgressive and involved in parody, but she's sort of peeping behind the veneer of femininity that most of the time that they try very hard to set up for themselves. And it's as if she's kind of wanting to challenge others to comment, but there's a resounding silence, as you can see, and nobody wants to involve themselves in that. Okay. I wanted to also just briefly show the multimodal representation of other worlds through images. So here we can see a series of images of the hairdressing salon that one of the girls works in. And there's the inside of the salon. And I did notice that there was a real continuity of these kinds of salons that the girls worked in, with the ways in which their bedrooms were decorated, and also the bathrooms of the nightclubs where the girls kind of adjusted their makeup and so on. Many pictures of the nightclub bathrooms with the girls doing each other's lipstick and hair. And I accidentally put these photos in twice, so I shall skip forward. Now, I did share some writing with my Facebook informants who, very true to form, responded online. They seem to have been flattered and mystified to see how their words had appeared in an academic context. And so here they are talking together, and so that I could see that they were talking in private messaging, they pasted onto their Facebook wall a screenshot of their private text message where Rhiannon had said, "I've got a degree in conducting with my penis." And Josie had replied, "In it, degree in being sick on the tram." Rhiannon replies, "Degree in watching porn." Josie says, "A degree in eyelashes not fitting over my glasses." Rhiannon says, "A degree in being a slut on a hoe." And here I feel like they're replying back to me, teasing me about being academic. Yeah, there's this kind of scary moment, really, where I thought they hate me. They're totally ridiculing the way in which I've written about them. And I met them and talked to them about this, and they were both very happy with what I'd written, and they were both very happy still to have been involved in the project, and were just very interested in how I had talked about their language, and how I hadn't been shocked and hadn't kind of been too frightened to include it within my project. So that's just sort of to share with you something around what can sometimes be a little bit uncomfortable in academic research, particularly when you're getting very close to your participants in this way. I want to just close this before we open up for questions to say that digital texts, I think, have reawakened us to question the nature of what you might call the actual and the virtual world, or the material and the immaterial. The term virtual or online world has properly been used to imply that there's a kind of parallel or alternative social space that we can choose to inhabit or go into, and it's used as a metaphor of real space or of being like the material world. And others have seen it as an escape from real space, making it clear that there's some kind of reality which we might like to leave behind sometimes. And while others see online as an extension of material reality or the material world. I think that Facebook has properties of uncertainty, and it's multidimensional and dynamic. The site's variously bounded and sometimes unbounded, and perceived through different subjectivities and changes according to the meanings of the discourses that we build it out of. I think Facebook is designed as a space for interaction, as a space for display, but it seems to exist in both a material and immaterial way, in ever-shifting contexts that we inhabit together, but make meanings within and each interpret differently. So I'm going to stop there. I couldn't end up with giving you a definition of materiality or immateriality, but I can tell you this is an interesting area to think about. So I'm going to close there.
Sorry, Dr. Davies, I hope I didn't cut you off there, but that was fabulous. Thank you so much for your insightful presentation. You've given us so much to think about, this immaterial, material dichotomy, and online spaces and our offline spaces, and what is the relationship between those places. We would like to, and let's be sure we give her a virtual round of applause at this time. That was just wonderful. We do want to invite Dr. Davies to answer any questions that you may have had, and so I'm going to turn things over to Dr. Odo at this point.
Great. Thanks very much, Tara. Okay, so I've been going through and collecting some of the questions folks were asking in the chat box. So they fell into generally into three categories. And so I'll just go through each and go ahead and ask them to you, Dr. Davies. So the first one had to do with self-presentation. There was some discussion around that as you spoke, and one interesting question that arose from actually one of the moderators asked, how does culture and class actually factor into the presentation of self in your view?
You'll need to turn your mic back on.
Thank you, sorry. I think it's an interesting question, and I was very aware of class throughout this project in particular. And I think the reason why I was so aware of class was because these young women were a long way from the social class that I am in. And it did make me feel quite awkward at times, because I was entering into worlds that I had never lived in. My previous research had been looking at the Facebook pages of people who were of a similar age to these girls, but who were at a school doing very academic qualifications, and who were very skilled writers, and who were very interested in talking about identity when I talked about Facebook with them. What surprised me was that these young women were really interested in talking about identity as well, and were as able to analyze what they were doing within Facebook as the more so-called academic kids. So that was something that was really interesting to me. But I think that Facebook interaction definitely reflects the social classes and cultures that particular people have, and that within Facebook, the way in which people behave towards each other is very, very similar to the way in which they behave towards each other offline. However, I would also say that as time goes on, different microcultures evolve within that online space, which then impact later on those people when they meet each other offline. So their relationships develop in new ways and develop interesting kind of social histories and nuances. But I think that always and forever rooted in their sense of who they are in relation to class and culture before they ever go in. If that answers your question.
That's great. Thanks very much. Okay, I have another question that is actually, it came up in a few different threads through the conversation. It relates mostly to methods. And so one sort of section of this question is, could you talk a little bit more about how you analyze the data and what kind of theories informed your analysis? And then the second part is, you mentioned about how your participation in the research didn't alter their behavior. How much do you think that your participation, if you could talk a little bit more about how you think that might have altered their behavior? Sorry, your mic.
Could you remind me of the first part of your question? I couldn't hold that in my head.
Sorry, I'll ask the first and then the second. So the first part is just basically to talk a little bit about how you analyzed the data and what kind of theories informed your analysis.
Okay, thank you. Yes, as a researcher, I've always been interested in language, and I've begun with the language always first, and so looking very closely at the text in terms of the kinds of words that people were using, which was why I ended up, I think, very interested in those stretches of texts where they're using very strong dialect, or where they're imitating the discourses from popular culture texts such as rap, or such as from film and so on. So very interested in the language as a marker of how they want to present their identity. But also then looking at their images as well, because obviously Facebook is a highly multimodal space, and the girls in particular were very excited about the images that they put in to Facebook. A lot of their Facebook interactions were about the photographs that they were able to put there. And so I did look at those in terms of content and in terms of similarities of photographs that were across the Facebook walls of all of the girls. So what I picked out to talk about seemed to be very typical kinds of image that would be, or collections of albums and things that would be across the Facebook spaces. So I was looking for commonalities and wanting to talk about those. But very much looking at them in terms of what I was interested in with the research, which was about what kind of identity are they trying, do they seem to be presenting, with an awareness that they would take out photographs that they didn't like. So it was about understanding how they wanted to present themselves. So these weren't images that had just been put up by someone else and that they had ignored. It was kind of understanding that they knew what photos were there of them, and looking at what that said about them, but also asking them to comment as well about the images and what they've said to each other. So in terms of understanding what they said to each other, I talked to the girls as well and asked them for their interpretations. The second part of your question, I can't remember.
That's okay. If it's okay, I want to jump to a question that had to do with the participants' perceived audiences, and maybe we can go back later, but this came up in a couple of threads through the conversation, and I thought it might be interesting to pose. So it was asked, basically, who do you think their intended audience was with their presentation of self on Facebook? Who were they presenting themselves to, and were they reaching the audience that they had in mind? Was it an imagined audience, or is this, someone said in quotes, a dream audience? And so what are some of your thoughts on that?
It surprised me how strong a sense of audience the girls actually had, because they were aware that whilst they were talking to each other individually and naming each other to address, so that they caught the attention of each other when they wrote their names into Facebook, although they knew that they were ostensibly addressing them, they were aware of wider audiences. And they were often aware, as they told me, of annoying other people by what they were saying, and that they would sometimes on purpose have conversations that they knew would have a particular reaction beyond their immediate circle, beyond those who they were actually talking to. And it became clear to me that there was quite a lot of watching going on in Facebook of what other people were saying. So, for example, in one of my interviews that I had with the girls, one of them said something like, "Oh, I saw that you liked Andrea's hair." And they all laughed, and I said, "Why are you laughing?" And they said, "Well, we all know she didn't like Andrea's hair. She just said she liked Andrea's hair." And so there's this kind of very complex stuff going on all the time. People being aware of what they were doing to annoy others. And then they talked about ironic liking. And so the like button within Facebook, which I thought was simply a like button, had all kinds of meanings within their circles, and they were using it in different ways. So they had quite a sophisticated sense of what they were doing.
Oh, that's great. Thank you very much. So another question related to the presentation of self and the kind of the people who were presenting themselves has to do with gender. All of your participants were female, and I wonder if you could maybe speculate a bit on how you think this might be a bit different had your participants been male.
Yeah, I do think it would have probably been slightly different, and I must admit one of the reasons why I picked hairdressers was because I knew that I wouldn't have to exclude boys from the sample. I was quite interested in doing a kind of purely female piece of work, just because I wanted to be able to write, and I did write a paper which looked at communities of gendered practice. And I can actually give you the reference for that. So I was interested in ways in which they were performing gender to each other. Nevertheless, there were sometimes males who came into their Facebook spaces and joined in with the conversation, but not very often. However, it was clear that boys were looking at their Facebook pages, and that the girls were aware that this was happening, and this was one of the reasons why they wanted oodles of beautiful pictures of themselves, and they really did work hard to make sure that they did have lots of lovely pictures of themselves. Nevertheless, they protested to me that they're getting ready together and their images that they put up online were basically because they're interested in fashion and beauty and they're not at all interested in boys. The way they spoke to each other sometimes, sometimes adopting very male ways of positioning women, did sometimes make me think that they were doing that for the sake of the boys, to scare them, to posture, to demonstrate some kind of power. It was an interesting thing, especially when Rhiannon was starting to talk about sculpting a penis and all this kind of thing.
That's very interesting. I have one final question, and we have about 2 minutes left to answer it. And just basically, if you could go back and talk a bit, you mentioned about how you didn't think your presence had a drastic effect on their online behavior. Could you talk, this is a question from a participant incidentally, could you talk a little bit more about your presence in the research and how you think it might have had some effect on their behavior?
I definitely think it may have had some effect, especially if I commented on their Facebooks. And I must admit I did want to have some effect, because I didn't want them to forget that I was there, because I thought that for ethical reasons that would be really important. They asked me questions before we began about, well, if we write that we're going into places where you have to be 21, will you report us? And I said I'll only report things where I think you're putting yourselves or other people into danger. There was all kinds of ethical difficulties there. So I think that they knew not to put anything illegal or too naughty there because I was around. But because of the extent to which they bantered in very transgressive ways, I felt that most of the time they didn't really mind me being there, especially when I didn't act shocked. I did quite a lot of work when I met them in the refectory. We always met where they wanted to meet, which was in the college refectory before their class started. And we would always have quite a big laugh and a chat, and it was very informal. And I purposely never went into the teacher's room in the college, all that kind of thing. So whilst I was clearly the adult and clearly some strange academic, at the same time I think that they weren't too nervous about putting stuff up there that they would have put up whether I'd been there or not.
Well, that's great. Thank you very much for the